Well, actually, my wife Renee took the call, Mike, and she relayed the message to me.
Oh, really?
And naturally, I was awesosely excited. I was very excited. Never expected to be here. In southwest Missouri, down south of Springfield towards Branson, Missouri, a little town called Highlandville, Missouri. That's where I was born and raised, right there. Yeah, we watched Silver Dollar City from the very beginning. Yeah, my dad helped work on the Table Rock Dam.
Oh, yeah.
And to build that dam, and about that time, the folks from Chicago come in and started Silver Dollar City.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was just raised up with my dad and my granddad clowning rodeos. My grandfather actually wore bib overalls when he was clowning. You know, there wasn't no such thing as the Levi's, which made up when I was clowning, but he had bib overalls and a loud colored shirt and made up his face a little bit with a wig. And I have to tell the one story about Grandpa. I clowned my first rodeo for a check, and I think I was 12 or 13 years old, and that was at Mansfield, Missouri, which is probably 40 or 50 miles southeast of Springfield. And they handed me a $20 bill for helping my grandpa clown that rodeo, and that was a lot of money back then for me.
And how often did your dad perform? Was that his?
Before I was born, Mom and Dad went to some rodeos around the country. They had a chance once to go to up around Buffalo, New York, close to Niagara Falls, and a little bit like that. I worked more with my grandpa than I did my dad. But I have to tell one story about Grandpa and I. We're going to a rodeo in Calico Rock, Arkansas. And our first piece of machinery on our farm and home was a 1947 Willys Jeep. That was our first piece of equipment. Up until that time, it was the horses and mule teams. And so these rodeo people learned that my grandpa could rope and tie a calf like in 20-some seconds, which was really fast back then. Nowadays, it's nothing. So we're on our way to Calico Rock, Arkansas in that 1947 Willys Jeep, and it started raining cats and dogs. And so that old Willys Jeep had a manual windshield wipers on it. And we're hauling that old yellow mare in that trailer back there, and I mean, on the way to Calico Rock, Arkansas, it's just crooked roads all the way. My grandpa, I'm trying to keep those wipers going for him. I'm sitting over here. He said, "Son, you're going to have to work those wipers faster. I can't see. We're liable to run into the back of that horse trailer on these curvy roads." So that was a pretty cool story. But we got to Calico Rock. We've got to put that Jeep and horse trailer on a ferry boat to go across the river, the White River, to the rodeo arena. So.
Oh, wow.
To leave Missouri or Arkansas to go to another state was a big deal, and I got called. I was working amateur rodeos, okay, and I had joined the Marine Corps in 1961. I joined the Marine Corps, and I was called to clown a rodeo in Okmulgee, Oklahoma, and so I come to Okmulgee and I hauled old Sorghum. Our third generation mule. My dad and granddad all worked the old Sorghum in the clown business, but so me and old Sorghum went to Okmulgee, Oklahoma, and clowned that rodeo, and everything just went really well. The bulls fought good, and it was a really good rodeo. And so the rodeo was over, and I'm sitting on my trailer back there wiping my makeup off. I'm hot and sweaty, and a gentleman that most everybody in Oklahoma or anybody in the rodeo business knows, and I'd always heard of him, was 16-time world champion Cowboy Jim Shoulders from Henrietta, Oklahoma. And Jim walked up to me and introduced himself and said, "I'd like for you to go to work for me. You think you would be interested in going to work for me, clowning rodeos?" And I told him, I said, "My gosh, I'd love to, but I've just joined the Marine Corps and I've got to go to boot camp in like 2 weeks." And so that was the end of that story. But Jim Shoulders might have been real important for planting a seed in my head that I could do this. I could make a living doing this. And I have to mention here, Mike, also my family and I, my brother and my sister, my mom and dad, we all piled in the car and drove to Dallas for the very first National Finals rodeo. And that rodeo kind of planted a seed in my mind a little bit also. But Mr. Shoulders told me about a colonel out at Camp Pendleton, California. He said, "Whatever you do when you're out there, try to get yourself introduced to Colonel Ace Bowen. He runs the rodeo arena there at Camp Pendleton." So Jim Shoulders put that seed in my head, and then one thing just went to the other, and I get to meet Ace Bowen, and he wants me to go to work for him there at Camp Pendleton, which I did. And I got to work some rodeos there in Southern California. And Andy Jauregui, an awesome stock contractor from Newhall Saugus, watched me work Camp Pendleton because he furnished all of our bucking stock there. And he liked my work. And Andy hired me for my first professional rodeo. And that was at Bishop, California with Slim Pickens. And that was quite a deal. And from that point on, I knew I was going to make a living in the rodeo business because Slim encouraged me too. In September of 1965. Went in a little bit slow. It was a little bit slow to start, but it picked up real quick. Yeah. My grandfather was real good with horses. He could. We broke and trained a lot of colts together. I helped him break and train a lot of horses. That's where I picked up my know-how from my grandfather about horses. And I watched him train horses, and he trained mules to jump on a lunge line, and they'd jump at Willie's Jeep, a convertible type Jeep. And he loved to train animals like that, and I learned that from him a lot. But right after I got out of the Marine Corps, I got a call to go to Chicago to work a Coliseum rodeo there at Chicago. And while I was there, there was a gentleman there with a chimpanzee from California that he was going to meet the Mexican circus with at that rodeo we were at there at the Coliseum in Chicago. And this chimp's name was Coco. And old Coco and I just became the best of buddies because the Mexican circus didn't show up on time. Oh, yeah. And so I realized, man, I would love to have a chimpanzee. And so Bob said, oh, these guys are going to be here. They're always late from Mexico. They'll be here. But old Toto was 4 years old, or Coco was 4 years old. And we go down to the concession stand. This is in the morning, early, go out to feed the horses. And he'd go with me, and I'd buy him a Coke, and he'd drink that Coke, and I have to have a chimpanzee. So the Mexican circus showed up, and Bob told me, he said, you don't want to get one that's 4 years old. He said, if you want a chimp, I'll get you one that maybe just weaned off its mother. And so I said, sure, Bob, what do you think one would cost? And he said, I can have you one next spring, just weaned off its mother, for $1,200. Now, Mike, you got to understand, $1,200 is a lot of money for me. Back then, that was probably '66. And the next spring at San Bernardino, California, here he comes with Toto, T-O-D-O, Toto. And Toto and I was with me in my clown business for 14 years. And he was a big part of my clown acts. I had horses trained to do tricks, lay down, sit up, and yes and no, and count, and take a nap together. But Toto was the main thing in my clown business for about 14 years. Well, because of Toto, I had a chance to meet the Queen of England while I was at Calgary Stampede, which the Calgary Stampede's a big rodeo, and it's a great honor to work that rodeo. There's not a bigger, better rodeo than the Calgary Stampede, in my opinion. And so while we're there, the Queen of England was there with Prince Philip. And so I knew she was there, but it wasn't a big deal for me. I mean, she's there, and the audience, that place seats 100,000 people for the rodeo. Well, anyway, the rodeo's over, and I'm back there wiping my makeup off and getting my face clean. And one of the rodeo committee men walks up and said, hey, Larry, do you mind bringing Toto over here? The Queen wants to meet Toto. Right then at that point, Mike, it wasn't a big deal. The Queen wants to meet Toto. Well, I can't say no. I can't do this. I took Toto over there, and we sat with her. And she was sitting here, and he sat on her right side, and I sat on the other side of him because I got to keep an eye on him. I didn't want him to hurt her, And Prince Philip was sitting on the other side of her, and he put his arm around her, and she had some jewelry on, and he's playing with her jewelry, and she had some stuff on her arm, and he's just playing with that jewelry, and she really enjoyed that. And she asked me if I knew the lady by the name of Jane Goodall. And I said, no, ma'am, I don't know her, but I read her book. And I said her experience with the chimpanzees in Africa was a great lesson for me, because I made a lot of mistakes with Toto. I didn't know their character, their natural character. And because of Jane Goodall and reading how they lived in their natural environment helped me tremendously. I had to become the chief chimpanzee. Their characters, their characters, yeah. It wasn't any time that I had him in an act, and you don't really train them. They just learn by watching. If he was here with us today, he'd want to be over there with that gentleman. He'd want to be doing something. Just a real quick story, for instance, Malcolm Baldrige, who's Ronald Reagan's Secretary of Commerce, you probably know that. I was out there working a rodeo for Malcolm in Connecticut, and he wanted me to come down to his office. He was the head honcho of Scoville at that time, before he became Reagan's Secretary of Commerce. And Malcolm wanted him to sit behind his desk. And he had a photographer there, and he had the Wall Street Journal, and he's reading it. You know. But if you wanted him to, he would sit there and smoke a cigarette. He'd light the cigarette himself, drink a beer. He loved beer. If he had his preference, though, he'd take a mixed drink over a beer, you know. But back to teaching him, I didn't know anything about chimpanzees, and I made so many mistakes with him. I made him a bed. You got to sleep there, and he wouldn't. And he'd just tear it up and sleep somewhere else. Well, I learned after I read her book, they never sleep in the same bed. They won't do that. And that's why they usually never have any kind of a problem with lice or anything like that. They always change beds. So I learned so much from Jane Goodall's book after I read it. And but it wasn't a few months after I had him, the other clown and I'd have a shootout in the arena. Of course, I've got my britches loaded with black powder, and when he shoots me, I hit my switch, and my britches blow up back there, and I hit the ground, and I need help. Is there a doctor here? I'm dying, you know. The ambulance comes in, and of course, probably there's a doctor here in Oklahoma City or somewhere that everybody knows this old doctor. He's been there forever, you know. And so, hey, Dr. So-and-so's here. And the ambulance comes in, red light, siren, you know, and it stops with the door kind of facing the grandstand best it can. And when they open that door, Toto just jumps out of that ambulance with a little white bag with a red cross on it. And they only walk in the jungle if the ground's wet, okay? So he gets out, and I didn't take no time to teach him to walk, but they walk like this. And when he gets out of that ambulance, it just brings the house down. And there wasn't anything to it, you know. It just brings the house down. That's what you're there to entertain the people. He gets over there to me, oh, I need help. He jumps on me. It gives me artificial respiration. He's jumping up down on me. He's going, and I'm going, and he just got the biggest kick out of that, you know, because he can hear the audience. Yeah. They're just going crazy. Yeah. And that doesn't work. Now he's going to give me mouth to mouth. And he reaches over, and I didn't have to teach him nothing. That was just natural, you know. And so after that, then I'm up, and I hold him up, and he claps his hands. Yeah. And that was within a few months after I had him. And eventually, we got into a lot bigger act where I Roman ride two horses. Roman riding is, they were hooked together, and I'm lunging them on a lunge line. And he was a cut-up. He loved to cut up. But this outside horse was a little bronky, and he'd reach around and slap him in the butt, and he'd buck. Mm-hmm. And Toto would hit the ground in the middle, and he'd turn somersaults and go across and jump back on the horses while they were moving. And that was a great act for big rodeos like Salinas or Calgary, because the audience could see everything, you know, real plain. And so then after he did that, well, the horses would go out, and well, folks, Toto wants to show you how John Wayne walks in the morning when he puts his boots on. So Toto would put a pair of boots on like you and I are wearing, and they'd come plumb up to his knees and then walk like that. And you just bring the house down. Just simple stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But he could hear that audience. He loved to make them laugh. Mm-hmm. I like to keep things short. I didn't like long stuff. I always had a little dog, and of course the clown breeches, your Levi's made my clown breeches, and they're size 54s. Now I can pretty near wear them now. But anyway, I always had this little dog in my clown breeches. I'd come out to the low short thing, and I'd get to scratching. The announcer said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "I think I've got a beachy bug." What's the beachy bug? I go to scratch him over here, and he beats me over here, you know. And next thing I know, wait a minute, what? And I pull that little dog out, you know, and he runs around there, you know. That's not a beachy bug. That's a Texas flea, you know. Just little stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had your highs and lows, but you learned to read the crowd pretty fast. Mm-hmm. You know, you learned to understand. Sometimes you got to change things. Mm-hmm. But I always give it 100% whatever I did. I remember working a rodeo up in Vancouver, British Columbia. And the first night there wasn't 200 or 300 people that is a nice coliseum. There wasn't hardly anybody there. I mean, it was just practically empty. And we had to put a rodeo on and entertain them, but I still give them 100%. And I've watched other performers not do that. And I said, I'll never do that. If I'm getting paid for it, I'm going to give it all I got. You know, that's another thing, Mike. I've been so blessed. I've been hurt a lot. I worked a lot. Rodeos really hurt bad. For instance, at the Denver National Western in Colorado, I had a bull hit me in the arm, not even a fighting bull, and he broke my arm right in two right there. In fact, I was going to tell Renee the other day, things starting to bother me. But it broke this bone right in two here. It was the 16th performance. There's 21 performances, and my arm's broke. And I run over to the fence. I knew this doctor was over there, and he said, Larry, your arm's broke. I said, I think so too. But I finished the rodeo, and we went to the hospital. I'm the only bullfighter, okay? I've got to fight bulls.
Right.
And we went to the hospital, and it was broke, and he set it, and he put a cast on, and you could see it from my here, but from here on up, you couldn't see nothing.
Oh, right.
And my best way around the bull is to the left. Yeah. It's better than my right way around the bull. And we've got one of our best bullfighting pictures. It was the next day after I broke that arm. I'm going between the bull and the cowboy on my left side. I'm like a horse. I got a left lead. We all got a better lead one way than we do the other. Personally, I was fortunate. I was raised up around cattle. I understand the cow, how she thinks. I understand how a Bremer bull thinks. I understand how bulls think. When my great-grandfather died, he wanted to farm our place. He was a farmer. And it was rough. That's rough country down there, hills and hollers down towards Branson. But he cleared a lot of land, and he wanted to farm. But when great-grandpa died, Grandpa just wanted a cowboy. So the next thing you know, he had 100 head of Bremer cows, and those Bremer cows would fight. And if they'd chase you if they thought you were going to bother their calf. And I really got a knack for playing with those Bremer cows. But I learned their characters, just like Toto. You have to understand their character. And you're going to do an interview with John Taylor if you haven't already done it.
Tomorrow.
John Taylor came to me right out of Vietnam, and we were Cal Poly, Pomona, California, and it's a college rodeo. And he walked up to me, had just got back from Vietnam. He said, I think I want to be a rodeo clown. And I didn't even know him, and we visited, and all of a sudden I realized he would be a natural. He's just a natural, funny person. You'll get a kick out of John. He never knew the first thing about a cow or horse, nothing. And I said, well, John, he said, I think I want to be a barrel man. And I said, do you know anything about cattle or bulls or anything? Nothing. He knew nothing. And he's become one of the best clown barrel men in the business. And he's a natural, funny guy. You'll get a kick out of John. He's a really natural, funny guy. And he became one of the best in the business. But I said, John, if we're going to do this, you're going to have to listen close. When I tell you to get down in that barrel, you don't question. You get down right now. If that bull's going to hit that barrel, you don't want to be halfway down.
Right.
If that'll knock you out quicker than anything. And if I say come up, you come up, John. Don't you trust me? When I tell you to do something, do it. And he did it. And I could just tell you so many stories about that first year. It was just unbelievable what happened. It's a wonder he wasn't killed, actually, but he wasn't. He made it through and became a great barrel man. A lot. I had my eye knocked out once. I've had my teeth knocked out I don't know how many times. I've had my jugular vein punctured. That was as close as I came to meeting my Waterloo right there. But I made it through, and believe it or not, I worked a rodeo the next afternoon. I couldn't run. That's a long story, and I won't get into it. But I had to sneak out of the hospital. And the doctor finally got me fixed about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I didn't die. I lived, and he got me fixed, but I snuck out of the hospital at 7 o'clock because probably too long a story to tell you, but I had to get out. It wasn't to work the rodeo. I was taking care of another gentleman's horses, his mules, his dogs, his ducks. That was a clown from California by the name of Wilbur Plauger, and he was working in a movie, and he had brought his outfit up to me and showed me everything to do to take care of everything. Where this feeds that feeds that. This, that, and the other, and then I'm going to take it down at this truck stop in Bakersfield, and after rodeo, you can come pick it up and go up to Lake Isabella. And I'm the only one that knows this. I can't tell anybody else what to do. And he does that and leaves it down there, and there it is. And I realize that I can't tell anybody else what to do. I've got to go get those horses in the trailer and get them out of there. And did, and we get up to Lake Isabella, and that doctor caught me getting out of the hospital. And he'd been up with me till 3 o'clock in the morning. And so my wife at that time went out to the truck and got my clothes, and we got dressed, and he meets me on the way out. What in the hell are you doing? I said, sir, I can't, you won't understand, but I got to get out of here. I've got horses down here that I'm taking care of for a gentleman. I can't even tell my wife how to do it. He said, mister, if that breaks loose, don't you come back to me. I'm not going to fix you. And I believed him, but he said, whatever you do, you listen to me close. Don't you dare run. Well, I couldn't fight bulls and not run. I couldn't fight bulls anyway because I was so weak. And when I come off all that knock you out stuff by about noon, I was sick. There was a black cowboy from Carthage, Texas there by the name of Murtis Diamond, a really good bull rider. Murtis and I worked in a movie together called J.W. Coop. And Murtis was there at the rodeo, and I asked him if he could fight bulls for me because I cannot run. And he agreed to fight the bulls for me.
Oh, wow.
And so I worked my clown acts. It was just one performance at Lake Isabella. Worked my clown acts, Murtis fought bulls. We loaded up and drove 1,000 miles to Lehigh, Utah. My wife drove our outfit, and I drove Wilbur's outfit. And I'm a sick son of a buck, I'm not kidding you. But that was the closest call I ever had, and still worked the next day.
Wow.
You understand Silver Dollar City. I watched Branson grow from a little fishing resort. My grandpa and grandma were married there when it was just a little fishing resort, and they built the Parasite Dam up by Forsyth, and that made the Lake Taneycomo there by Branson. Well, it started growing. And they came in and they started to build the Table Rock Dam to dam up the White River on up the way. And put in Table Rock Lake. At that time, the Hershon family from Chicago came to Branson and leased 100 acres out there where Silver Dollar City is at, where Marvel Cave is at, and leased that. And but now I'm rodeoing hard. My dad's working on the dam. I'm rodeoing, but my old preacher friend that had 11 kids in his family, those kids put in the first music show in Branson, and it was down at the skating rink in downtown Branson. And they had to fix the floor. They had holes in the floor and put in some seating and had the very first music show there. And Hershons are just leased the property, and they're starting to build Silver Dollar City. And the first thing was a little railroad they put in. Well, so they asked the Ballnauber kids, which are the Mabe family, to come out there and do the Hatfields and McCoys every afternoon. Right. And they did that. And then the next thing, the Presley family came in and built their theater. You know all these things. Built the theater. And
childhood there.
And then the Ballnaubers went out and built the Ballnaubers Theater. And then this grew tremendously. Well, all this time, I'm rodeoing and watching these kids become millionaires. It just boomed. And I decided I'd like to put a pro rodeo on in Branson. And that was a mistake, because that's where I got out of the rodeo business. I lost a lot of money there. And I was totally broke, totally disenfranchised. That was 1980. It got so hot that summer that the sun never went down. It was just so hot. They're not going to come to an outdoor rodeo and it's so hot. They'd rather go to an air-conditioned music show. And we just couldn't get the people there on that last year. And it was a great rodeo. We put on an awesome rodeo, but it just didn't make any money that last year. It lost a lot of money. So I hung up my spurs right there for a while. I said, I don't want to rodeo no more. And that was my last experience until I met Renee. And I met her at a rodeo. I announced quite a few rodeos actually after that. And I met Renee at Georgetown, Texas, at a rodeo. I'm announcing for my nephew and his wife. And they're going to be here tomorrow. But after I met Renee, we've been married 30 years now, she got me back in the rodeo business, and we started going to some clown reunions and kind of revived me a little bit. Just taking care of our place. We got horses and dogs and chickens and birds and grandkids. Our grandkids are all playing baseball and football and basketball, and we keep really busy trying to keep up with them. And thanks to him, just Red Skeleton at Reno, Red Skeleton wants to see Toto, and I got to meet so many people. And Ronald Reagan wanted to meet him, and because of that, I shook hands with Ronald Reagan.
Oh,
And
wow.
so we're over in Rome, and the Pope wants to see him. So at a certain time every afternoon, of course, we're trying to promote the rodeo and everything we can do to make people aware of the rodeos in Rome. But somebody mentioned they taking him down there at 2 o'clock or something in the afternoon. Pope comes out. Well, I've got Toto with me because they invited me down there. Well, I'm holding him on my hip like this, and I could see the Pope looking around. He's looking for him. So I put him up on my shoulders like this and have him wave at him, and he saw him and he waved back at him. That's a pretty cool story. A lot of people don't believe it, but it happened. There were so many things, Mike, with that chimp happened that it's unbelievable, actually, all the stuff that happened.